Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are in Canada. Welcome to our System Center 2012 Data Center and Private Cloud Overview webinar. My name is Bruce Redfern. I'm a Microsoft Certified Trainer and the Operations Manager for the Victoria branch. A little background on our company, CTC Train Canada. We're a privately owned Canadian organization established in 1989. We have facilities across the country. I'm in Victoria, and we have facilities in Halifax and right the way from Halifax to Victoria. And we deliver in some markets in English and French, so we have the ability to deliver those courses. And we are a Microsoft Gold Learning Partner. We present Microsoft Certified Training. We also have a guarantee to run philosophy for our courseware. We don't cancel courses due to low enrollment. However, our definition of low enrollment depends on the type of course. So if it's a graphics or a desktop application course, we only require one student to guarantee them to run. If it's something like a Microsoft Certified Training course, then we need 3. But if we get 3, then the course will be guaranteed to run. And our key partners, we are very much a partner of Microsoft. We're a Gold Learning Partner, as I mentioned earlier, but we also partner with IBM and ESI, Mile2 for security training. All our locations are Prometric testing centers, and we also partner with AHEAD Technologies. And I'm back to the beginning. Okay, so let me close this off. So I'll start off talking about the cloud computing concepts and considerations. My agenda for this section will be to look at the Microsoft vision for cloud computing, Microsoft's private cloud with System Center 2012. The System Center 2012 product is, of course, an evolution over the previous versions of System Center, but it includes several new components, and the overall focus of this suite of products is to manage either your on-premises regular infrastructure, servers and desktop machines and so on, or your own cloud, or even resources that are residing in Microsoft's cloud. So I'll look at the moving to the cloud, the preparations and decisions associated with that, and I will not be talking about the program incentives here. Hang on a second now. So Microsoft's vision for cloud computing. What are we talking about here? Well, we need to talk a little bit about what cloud computing is. And the idea behind cloud computing is that we can have some agility to be able to respond to changes in the demand, people requesting new servers to be put up. We can focus a little bit on the economics. We can get some consolidation of servers, put them on a single server, put multiple virtual machines on a single server, and be able to focus on providing those services to the company. We have in the past done this through traditional methods. The cloud computing is still providing those services to our end users because people still need to be able to get at their email, run their financial applications or what have you. But instead of looking at it sort of on a how many servers do we need to host that particular product perspective, we start to implement a cloud so that we have the flexibility and the agility to provide new servers or to provide additional servers to service those applications. So we gain some benefit from going to this cloud infrastructure, being able to pool resources for one thing. I have 7 servers, but I have 12 applications, and I can put those 12 applications and their associated virtual machines and so on onto that pool of machines and get the economics, get the agility, the ability to respond. It's elastic. It allows us to decommission unneeded machines, add new machines as needed, without having to go out and buy new hardware every time, or without ending up with hardware that we're no longer using, because we'll simply use those resources or that capability to host other services for the company. We also gain, through the self-service, we gain the ability to have a self-service implementation. So we can have in our cloud console that lets a business unit manager, for example, decide that they want a new application of some sort and pick it from a catalog of applications and have it be implemented in that private cloud, in that cloud, be it private or public, without getting IT involved, because we've done, or IT has done all the work up front. They've set up this template for this application. They have provisioned or set up virtual machines that are ready to go if they're required. And if somebody wants another copy of that, maybe you've got a development group who are developing a website or a web application, and they say, we'd like to have another version that we can do some testing on. Well, through self-service, they could kick that off. And they could, again, you would then, again, have that agility because you can respond immediately to their requests. You get the economics. They don't have to go out and buy new servers, and we can just focus on the needs of the company. And then we can also look at usage-based billing on that. So who's using our private cloud, how much are they using it, and if there's any bill back involved or even just justification for the expenses that are involved in building the cloud. We say, well, look, this department is using this facility. Even if we're not billing them for it, we can at least show that it is being used. So we're going through this transition. We have in the past basically had a physical implementation of our applications. If we needed a SQL Server, we bought a server, we installed SQL Server on that server. We install the operating system, we install the applications, we gave people access to the server, and then if they needed another SQL Server, we would probably go out and buy another box. Or if they needed an Exchange server, we would buy another box. Over the past few years, that has been transitioning to a virtual environment where when somebody requires another server, now a common response is to provision them another virtual machine. So you say, okay, you need another SQL Server, I will build another virtual machine. So I don't need to buy another physical box to host that. Right? I simply need to set up a virtual machine, install an operating system into that, install the application into that, and provide you with access to it. And that gives me some agility. I can respond quite quickly to your requirement for another server. I don't have to go out and buy anything. I don't have to have anything sitting on the shelf, using up money and not doing anything, just waiting for somebody to request it. And a lot of our traditional applications are transitioning to this virtual environment. What cloud is about is moving beyond that to an environment where you're looking at infrastructure as a service or even platform as a service. Now, infrastructure as a service, that takes that virtual layer where we're provisioning machines and we're provisioning database software or mail software or ERP software or whatever it is on virtual machines, and makes it into sort of a commodity so that an end user or an IT person, if you don't want to give the capability to a departmental manager, you could still have an IT person say, oh, I've had a request for a new SQL Server, and they click a button and a new SQL Server is created automatically from the templates that you have already created for a Windows Server 2008 R2 with SQL Server 2008 R2 installed on it, for example. And it simply is instantiated or created from that work that's already been done. So the underlying layer, what's underneath in that cloud, is not visible to the end user, and in fact is managed as a sort of collection of resources, but not as the individual servers. I simply get requests to provision another server, and I provision it. And it's going to sit on that cloud, but I don't worry about where in the cloud it's hosted. Now, obviously, at some level, somebody has to manage the servers that provide the virtual hosts where these virtual machines are going to run, look after the network, look after the backup and all of that sort of thing, and monitor all of this stuff. But that's the cloud. That collection of services that provides that functionality to users is the cloud. And then the provisioning is simply providing one of these template machines that we have ready to go. We've done our work, of course. There's no free lunch here. You had to do the work to configure this ahead of time. But the minute it's required, you can simply provision it. And the infrastructure just sits there. So we manage the infrastructure as an infrastructure, and then it provides a service to those end applications. You can also have platform as a service, which is sort of taking your idea of providing a SQL server to providing simply a SQL application. And then the application resides on a virtual SQL server sitting inside a cloud, and we don't even care which server it's on. In fact, if you look at Microsoft's cloud offerings now, that's essentially what they're offering. Because I can go to Microsoft, and you can do this with a trial subscription if you're interested, and ask for a SQL Azure database server, and Microsoft provisions that for you, gives you a host onto which you can install a database, and you can install store procedures and views and all that good stuff that SQL Server people do, and use that functionality without worrying anything about the servers. I don't know where that server is. I don't know how it's maintained, but I know it's redundant. I know it's backed up. I know all of these other things are provided by the platform as a service. So I simply use the platform, being SQL Server, without any cares about how it's being done underneath the surface. So Microsoft is already doing this, and other vendors, I mean, Microsoft are not the only cloud vendors out there, are doing this to provide cloud services out on the internet that you can tap into and use. The idea of private cloud is having that infrastructure in your own environment, and therefore it becomes your cloud, if you will. So what we're looking at there is basically optimizing your business using that cloud infrastructure, taking away the management of those individual servers, or those virtual servers, or even those virtual hosts, and turning it into a sort of private cloud infrastructure. So we have public cloud right now. As I said, there are various vendors, but of course Microsoft with its Azure platform is providing public cloud, and you can take advantage of that same level of abstraction so that you can simply focus on running your business by implementing a private cloud. So in the private cloud environment, we have the Windows Server Hyper-V platform that gives us that virtualization environment where I can run another virtual machine. We have SQL Server as a sort of tying database that records information about many different aspects, but it also helps us to run System Center, and then System Center that helps us to manage that. Now, in the Windows Azure platform in the Microsoft cloud, right, they are looking after their cloud, and we just use the platform as the service. As I said, we connect and use the SQL Server function without knowing what virtual machine it's running on, what host it's running on, how it's backed up, or anything. We just know that they're going to provide us with consistent service. But what's common between those two environments is we still have identity. We want to make sure that you are able to connect, and only the authorized people are able to connect. We have virtualization in both environments. We're not going to use dedicated host machines for each service that we're trying to run inside our own private cloud. We're going to use virtual machines, but we'll also need a management infrastructure that allows us to monitor those and know if anything goes wrong, and we'll need a development environment in which we can augment that and create new applications and so on. So that would be common between those two environments, that public and that private cloud. They both have these common needs. But your private cloud can be implemented using Hyper-V, using System Center and its various programs to be able to manage that, right? And then, as I said, SQL Server becomes an integral part of that, because almost all of the System Center products use SQL Server databases to store their configuration information and the information about the virtual machines and the services that you're offering and so on. So what is a private cloud? I think I kind of given that away already, but the point is it's a group of pooled resources that are elastic, so I can add and remove resources from different functions. It can offer a self-service capability so that a business unit manager can say, I need a SQL Server for development purposes, right? Or I need or maybe a better way to phrase that would be, I need a credit card front-end web application to do some testing against. Well, we have a template for that. Let's create one from that template through that self-service implementation, and it's usage-based in that we can track it. It's customizable, of course, because that's why it's a private cloud. When you're dealing with public clouds like Microsoft's Azure platform, you basically have what they offer. Right? They offer, in the case of SQL Azure, they offer a database host, and you can have as many databases as you want, but you can't go beyond that and put common language runtime code in there, if that means anything to anybody. You're not able to customize that SQL host. You're just able to use it. If it's your cloud, you can customize it, of course, and you get complete control over it. So the cloud, a private cloud, is a cloud dedicated to you. It's your cloud. You can do what you want with it. If you need to provision new machines, you can. If you decide you have too many machines for the services that you're running, you can decommission machines, take them out of the cloud, use them for something else. So the Microsoft Private Cloud is all about the app. It's getting the app to the user. I mean, all of this other stuff, the servers, the virtualization, the backups, it's all very nice, but what we're actually using, of course, is the users are using an application to get at data. And it might be a web application, people are coming across the web to order things, or it might be internally you have an ERP or a customer relationship management software, right? And that's what people are interfacing with. Behind the scenes, we'll have a private cloud to provide the infrastructure to host that. The private cloud also allows us to manage multiple virtualization platforms. I'll mention that in a moment. But of course we have Hyper-V, but we can also manage VMware, and we can also manage Citrix Xen. So if you're using either of those virtualization platforms now, you can still take advantage of the huge range of capabilities that's available through System Center in terms of provisioning and monitoring and so on, but use somebody else's virtualization platform. And it can also install and manage from bare metal machines. So I can bring in a server that has nothing on it, literally nothing, a hard drive and a processor and memory and nothing installed, and have System Center deploy it as a virtual host and then deploy virtual machines to it and so on. Right? So I can, from the metal up, from the bare metal, I can implement that. It's best-in-class performance across the suite. There's nothing really that covers all of the bases like System Center does, and it's cloud on your terms. So you can decide what you want to virtualize and how you're going to virtualize it and how many resources you provide and that sort of thing. So cloud computing, this whole sort of paradigm of rather than provisioning an individual server or even a virtual machine when somebody asks for something, but instead providing a service through the cloud, kind of changes the conversation between the business units, people who are looking for the services, and IT, the ones who are providing it. Right? The service provider is the data center admin, the person who's looking after the servers. The service consumer is the application owner. That might be a business unit manager, manager of marketing, needs this application. The IT people in the background provide the service that hosts that. Well, each of them has challenges or things they need addressed by this solution. From the service provider's perspective, they want to be able to pool resources. So having a private cloud allows them to pool resources. I can have business units making requests from me continuously, but I probably don't have the budget to buy each one of them a new server. And it wouldn't be a good use of money anyway. So I can pool those resources. I can put 5 servers in place and manage 20 applications. And if it turns out that 20 applications are starting to max out or use up the full capability of those 5 servers, I can add another server and move some virtual machines to the new server, but still pool those resources. I get delegation and control. Right? That's what I'll want. I want to be able to decide who can manage this, right, and what they can do. I want to be flexible and elastic and move around resources. This particular application is running more slowly than the owner would like. Let's give that particular application more resources, give it more CPU, put fewer virtual machines on the machine that's hosting that service, for example. Give it more memory. And not only add more stuff, but also decrease stuff. So somebody had a development website. They were doing a lot of work over 6 months of the development of an application, but now they only need it occasionally for testing. Well, I could scale it back. Let's take away a couple of processors. Let's take away 2 gigs of RAM that was dedicated to that machine and give it to the other service because it doesn't need it anymore. And it's cost efficient, of course, because if I can use all of these resources in a pooled way, then I get cost efficiency. All I'm going to need to look at is the overall usage of my pool of resources, and if that's getting close to the limit, then I can budget for the provisioning of a new server, but a new host, or more memory, or whatever it is that's required. But I don't need to do that right away. I can wait until the trend of usage that I'm seeing suggests that it's going to be time to buy another server. Well, I might even have the other effect. We had a lot of development work, and now we're stable, and we don't need 5 machines in the data center hosting all those virtual machines anymore. It's quite clear we could get away with 4. Well, let's repurpose one of those. From the service consumer's perspective, they their requirements, the thing that drives them towards or changes the way they look at cloud computing, is that they get empowered because they can ask for services if that sort of self-service capability is created, and they have some agility. So they have a development team. They need to set up a server for them. They can do it quickly. That project is over. They can decommission things quickly, so they have that self-service experience. They have application visibility and control, so they see their own application and they control it, but they don't need to be able to have rights to control the machines that it's running on, because that's IT's job. IT's job is to provide the machines and let the service consumers, the application owners, use that capability. And it simplifies it for them. They don't have to have conversations with IT about things they don't necessarily understand or want to understand about how that's going to be implemented. Right? So from their perspective, it can simplify things. So what we end up with then is, sorry, I've got a transition issue here. Back here a second. I jumped way ahead. I'm not sure how I did that, but let me just finish this up. So these guys can get together using a service agreement, or in the form of a service agreement. So the service agreement says the data center will provide these facilities to the service consumer. It will be up 99.5% of the time. The response time, if there's an outage, will be 1 hour during business hours and things like that, and they can formalize that into a service agreement. And now they both have their own basically view of this, and nobody needs to know really the details from the other side. The service consumer doesn't need to know how many servers are his or hers, or how much memory. It's not part of the agreement. The agreement is we provide the service, and the service will be up this much of the time, and it will be this quick. Right, and that's what the service agreement will entail. So that common management experience across that environment in the private cloud and in the public cloud. I mean, if you go and buy these services from a public cloud hosting company like Microsoft or the others out there, you get basically the same experience. You get to ask for stuff, they get to provide it, there's some agreement there, you'll pay this much, they provide that level of service. Right? And you can then, as a company, deliver IT as a service, with flexible management of that across multiple kinds of environments. So System Center gives us a lot of the tools for this. So just a little bit on the history of System Center. I said I would cover this. We started out with a product, actually it was called Systems Management Server back in 1994. It was managing clients, so desktop machines. There was another product that came out in 2000 called System Center. It wasn't called System Center Operations Manager then. It was called Microsoft Operations Manager, but it managed your servers. Those two got combined with other products to form the System Center suite around the 2006-2007 era. And one of the products that got added was Data Protection Manager, so that's a backup and recovery facility. With the introduction of virtualization in the Windows platform, we needed a way to manage that effectively, because going to each host machine and running Hyper-V Manager is not the way to manage multiple virtual machines on multiple hosts. Besides which, Hyper-V Manager doesn't let me move running virtual machines from one host to another. Right? So I needed a product that could manage all of them, and that was System Center Virtual Machine Manager. So this suite has been growing, and as I said, it got rebranded. So what was SMS became Configuration Manager. What was Microsoft Operations Manager became System Center Operations Manager. And then Microsoft acquired Opalus, which gave them IT process automation. So now I can provision a machine and run the software to install the applications and run scripts and do a bunch of tweaks, all as one sort of run book, is what Opalus calls it, to build a server from the ground up. Okay, we're going to use a Windows Server 2008 template with a SQL Server, a sysprep SQL Server installation, and on top of that we're going to install some other software, and then we're going to run some scripts, and then it's going to be ready. And that was what Opalus gave us. Service Manager, which was part of System Center, gives us that platform through which people can request new new service offerings, and then we've also got application insight with the AVI code that's built into Operations Manager that can do website monitoring. Because one of the problems with website monitoring is a lot of what's happening is happening on the client. We're sending stuff to their web browser, and they're seeing something that is not on the server. So we have end-to-end monitoring with the AVI code that was incorporated into that. So System Center 2012 Cloud and Data Management gives us the tools for managing this. Right? We can have a productive infrastructure, we can have predictable applications because we've already set the template up, we know exactly how this is going to perform when we deploy it, and it becomes the cloud. It's a private or public cloud if you're going to use the Azure platform, for example. Gives me some flexibility and gives me physical, virtual, and cloud management, because I'm going to have physical machines. I don't get away from that. I still have to manage them, and I need to know if anything is going wrong with them, so the Operations Manager aspect of System Center lets me monitor those. So System Center itself helps me deliver IT as a service. Right? From my business requirements, so the user needs a new web app to do testing against, or to do training with, or whatever, or development, right? We'll give them a self-service portal. The service model, which defines what that is, can be deployed using the IT process automation, using IT service management workflows and so on associated with ITIL for that matter. We'll need IT tools that let us deploy, configure, and migrate those things, those services that we're deploying. And that will lead us to the point where we can have infrastructure as a service, or possibly even platform as a service, so that when an IT or an application owner says, I want a demo testing website for our application, all of this flows through. So, and of course, once we have that deployed, we'll need to be able to monitor it. We have to make sure that it's running. We need to audit who's using it. We need to inventory what virtual machines are running and how much resources they're using and that sort of thing. So System Center provides all the tools to let us do this. On the front end, the person who's making the request would be using System Center App Controller. There's also System Center Service Manager, which is the IT tool. This is where we set up the templates for that web front end that the application owner wants a demo or wants a testing site. System Center Orchestrator lets us do the automation component, the deployment of the server and the installation of the software and the patches and so on. And then System Center Virtual Machine Manager, I know that's a little small on your slide there, but System Center Virtual Machine Manager is the one that's looking after the actual virtual machines and moving them around from host to host as needed. System Center Configuration Manager is the one that's looking after configuring those hosts, patching them if necessary. And then on the auditing and monitoring and inventory side, we have System Center Operations Manager, which is monitoring those virtual machines, those host machines, those applications, and determining if they're healthy, so that we can notify somebody if there's a problem. Hey, a server went down, or the web front end is so busy now that we should really provision another server because it can't handle the load. So it's doing all of that. So these are all the pieces that make up the System Center platform. Right? So Service Manager is the IT component for provisioning and seeing how these applications are running. System Center App Controller is the one that the end user uses to provision. System Center Orchestrator is the automation component. System Center Virtual Machine Manager is the one that manages virtual machines on Hyper-V hosts, or in fact VMware or Citrix Xen servers. System Center Configuration Manager to make sure that those servers get patched. Operations Manager to do the day-to-day monitoring. And all of this is sitting on top of hardware platforms. Traditionally, it was Windows Server. Now it's Windows Server with Hyper-V running virtual machines. And then once we set up a private cloud, it becomes a Windows Server Hyper-V based infrastructure as a service environment. And if you want to, you could move some of this. You could move your SQL servers, for example, to the cloud and make it platform as a service, where you're actually using SQL Azure as your infrastructure. So today we have Virtual Machine Manager Self-Service Portal. That allows us to provision a virtual machine. System Center 2012 gives us App Controller, and a Service Manager can say, give me a web site for placing orders. You know that one that we have in production? Well, give me another one. I want to do some testing. And so they just go there to System Center App Controller and make that request to the self-service portal. So behind the scenes, System Center Virtual Machine Manager, App Controller, and Operations Manager are what the IT people use to look at that. Right now, today, we have Operations Manager and Service Manager. That is pre-2012. Right? But we now have this ability to, through App Controller, see what makes up that web applications, because I was saying it would be an order entry site. Well, it would be a web front end, it would be a SQL Server database back end, it would be a mid-level processing computer that has business rules on it, and the shopping basket and the product catalog and all of that would be being created through that mid-level. So being able to monitor that whole thing through Operations Manager gives me great control over that. Delivering IT as a service, today we have the System Center Service Manager and the Opalus, which was previously a separate product, now has been acquired by Microsoft. That gets rolled into Service Manager and Orchestrator with System Center 2012 and gives us that capability to automate the deployment of those systems. Delivering IT as a service, today we have System Center Configuration Manager and Virtual Machine Manager. Again, System Center Virtual Machine Manager 2012 gives us more control, gives us more of a private cloud infrastructure management, and is part of the System Center 2012 fleet. And again, as I said, we have Hyper-V as our platform, Windows Azure, and System Data Protection Manager to host SQL Server or Windows on the cloud, and System Center Data Protection Manager to do the backup. They are also integrated into 2012. It's been extended. All of the System Center products have been improved in some way. Probably the one that's seen the least improvement, least change is Configuration Manager. But Data Protection Manager and all of these other tools have undergone quite a lot of change. So delivering IT as a service, if you want to monitor this, I could have got an AVI code, which was a separate product, System Center Service Manager and Operations Manager. Now that's rolled into System Center 2012, and I can do deep insight. If you've got a .NET website or a Java 2 Enterprise Edition website, you can now monitor it from the server down to the browser. I can install stuff that gives me information about how it's behaving on the browser. That gives me much more insight into the tool. So that gives me productive infrastructure. I've got all of these environments. As I was saying earlier, I can now manage Citrix and VMware from my System Center products. It gives me heterogeneous and fragmented data center. You know, people have been using VMware for a while, are moving some things into Hyper-V, maybe have already looked at or have already implemented Citrix and are looking at, can I manage that and manage Hyper-V as well? Yes, you can through this product. So it gives us heterogeneous support, right, for all of those products. It gives us a process automation. I want to deploy a server. Here's all the pieces that make that up. Let's move a machine from one host to another if it's having a problem, so I can fix that. And I also have that self-service infrastructure. So marketing decide they want to have improved capacity on their cloud, right? They can say, let's pick marketing, the marketing application. Let's move up to the premium level. Here's why we're anticipating some Christmas shopping rush. So I want to increase the resources that are available to that environment, right? And that gives us that self-service infrastructure as well. So that's the predictability of the application. This is the Service Manager. I won't get into this, but this is what I pick up. I say this is the pieces that make up my application. Right? I can change that. I've got a back-end server. I've got two back-end servers, two front-end servers. One's having a problem. Let's do something. Let's run a script to fix that and bring that online. Right? See what the problem is. Oh, the problem is, and I should zoom in on this, but the problem, if you read this, is that it's taking too long to authenticate the users. So that gives me enough tools or enough information to be able to go off and debug that. There it is. So out of the 16 seconds it took for this web page to respond, 15.8 seconds were processing the logon. Right? So that's deep information into the application. That's telling me exactly where my problem is with that website, and that gives me the tools then to go out and fix that. So that's my predictable application and my deep monitoring and diagnosis of the applications. Right? And what you're going to find is, over time, we're probably going to move from this kind of environment where we are now, where we have a traditional, one server, one application kind of environment. We're already moving into a virtualization environment, and that's pretty much where we are right now. A lot of people are moving stuff into the virtualization platform. Some people have taken advantage of public cloud, so there's some Azure which is the right-hand side of this diagram here. Over time, this is going to change, at least that's the prediction of the industry analysts and so on, so that the future distribution of computing models will be into this private cloud. So that the people who are running, designing, coding, testing the applications don't need to worry at all about the IT infrastructure. It's all taken care of and virtualized for them and provided as a service. Right? And this is just the single pane of glass. This is the app controller I was mentioning earlier. Shows me my self-service implementation, shows me what virtual machines I have, what applications I have, which ones are running on the private cloud and which ones are running on the public cloud, so I can manage them all through that single interface. So the IT service management, I won't go through the rest of these too much. I don't have that much time left. But as we move from this on-premise to software as a service environment, we're moving less and less, we're moving to managing less and less of this layer or this stack of services that we provide. Right? So right now we're sort of at the infrastructure as a service. Eventually you'll get to platform as a service, but virtualization and servers and storage and network are sort of the fabric. They're there, and System Center lets you manage that, automates the management of many aspects of that, and you just look after the top level of that. Right, so your IT service management will need to go through some review if you move to this environment. Who's going to manage all of these? Right? What's the principal difference between what's different with the private cloud? Right? People have this perception that they have infinite capacity and continuous availability, and that's not really what private cloud is. It's simply a method of abstracting that lower level of the service. But we do have resilience. So with our private cloud, if one server fails, we can move the applications that we're running on that server to another one and have them up again in a short period of time. We don't need specialized hardware. We don't need complicated installations. We just install our cloud, and our cloud looks after making sure that all of the virtual machines are running no matter what's happening with the hosts. So it focuses on resiliency over redundancy. That's basically what we're looking at here. So you'll need to look at all of these sort of processes in your company, if you have any of these, and see how they're affected by your private cloud. Right? And I won't get into how that's going to affect you because that's quite a long conversation. If you are looking at going to virtualization, Microsoft does offer a toolkit for managing or for looking at, it's the migration and planning toolkit for looking at the servers that you have and seeing whether any of them are good candidates for virtualization, and also helps you to size that. So you might want to look at that map toolkit on their site. It does an agentless discovery of the machines on your site. It collects performance metrics on the machines and says, well, these machines are running at 10% CPU. They could be virtualized. They could be consolidated onto one host. And gives me a sort of hardware library and application capacity sizing for moving to the Azure platform as well, if you're interested. So I just wanted to give you that sort of overview of what System Center is. Right? Microsoft is pretty much committed to moving to cloud computing. I mean, they've put a lot of servers in place so that they can host these kinds of services now. So the Azure platform is already being used by many companies. You can, as I said, get a trial subscription to Azure and try putting a database on there. It can be queried the same as a local SQL Server database. And then the nice thing about Azure is you no longer need to worry about the backups because Microsoft's doing all that. And eventually, if you think that's a good thing, after 90 days you could buy it. But the first 90 days you can try it for free. And the logical architecture of that private cloud infrastructure built on System Center 2012 technologies can be used whether you're using the public Azure offering or your local private cloud. You will be in control of it with System Center. IT service management concepts need to be addressed because now it's different. Who's going to manage what? And the business cases and benefits for System Center solutions from the data center can be developed using that the MAP toolkit, the assessment and planning toolkit, the Microsoft Assessment and Planning Toolkit. So I hope that was useful.
Bruce, sorry to cut you off. Your audio seems to have dropped.
There we go. How about
now? There you go.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
I can hear you again. Thanks.
I probably hit the wrong button there. So did we have any questions, Laura, that we need to address right away?
Let me just check with Alex.
Okay. Well, let me just put up my contact slide here again. And if anybody has any questions that they would like, remember you can like to address. Remember that you can send them to your CTC representative, sales representative. If you want to, you can also send them to me. I don't mind. I'll be more than willing to answer those questions. So there's my email, bruceR@traincanada.com. If you are thinking of pursuing training on the private cloud environment, we do have 2 training offerings. I'll just finish up by talking about those. Let me just search for cloud, because then I'll get both of them. We have 2 courses, 10750, Monitoring and Operating a Private Cloud with System Center 2012, and 10751, Configuring and Deploying a Private Cloud with System Center 2012. And these will take you through all of these technologies. Right, both courses are 5 days long, so there's 10 days worth of training there associated with the System Center private cloud offerings. Okay.
Bruce,
And if you have any questions, go ahead.
sorry. Yeah, we're good. There aren't any questions on the chat box.
Okay. So as I said, if you have any questions on those courses, right, or if you want to ask me specifically, which one of those would be best for me to take, or what's covered in that course, you can, of course, go to our website, and if you click on either of the courses, if you search on private cloud, you'll find these. You'll find the outline of the course, what each module covers. Right? But they are essentially System Center courses. But if you have any further questions, please don't hesitate to email me or your CTC sales representative. So if that's it, if no one has any questions right now, I'd like to thank you all for attending today. If you have, thank you for your time. Have a great day, and we will be offering future free webinars. There's one coming up at the beginning of October, I believe it is, Laura, for Windows Server 2012. Is that correct? Laura's left me. Okay. Anyway, there is there is one coming up. If you're interested in which free events or which webinars we're offering, if you go to our website, you will find that there. And I just realized I didn't share that, so let me just share my application, or just move my web server, I should say, over here. Oh, gee. If I get it over here, that would help. There we go. Close that guy. Close that guy. And at the top of this site here, if you put in private cloud, that will lead you to these 2 courses that I was mentioning. And if you go to our home page at the bottom, you will see free events. And that's probably how you found out about it, although you may have been told by one of CTC's people. But free events here will tell you about upcoming webinars. Oh, no, sorry. I correct myself. The one on October 1st is on SharePoint 2010. This was today's. All right, well, if there are no questions then, I'd just like to thank everybody for attending, and we hope to see you at our facilities soon. Okay, thanks for coming. Have a great day.